Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how to make a vase from parts. So the vase I'm going to do is made from 3 sections. Um, this is a vase that's made from a single piece of clay. Some things that you'll notice when you compare is that the vase is made in sections. Well, there's a potential for you to have more exaggeration in the form. Also size, like if this is the largest I'm able to throw, if I were to make a vase from 3 sections, it could be this big or bigger. I mean, you're not really limited to the number of sections that you throw to assemble and create a vase. Um, the body was thrown as a closed form, and then a cylindrical top, and then this is just a bowl thrown this way and then turned upside down to attach to here, right? You can break like if this is too difficult to, this body is too difficult to throw, you could always throw a bowl and then another bowl, and that they're joined rim to rim. Okay. I have some parts over here that were thrown yesterday that I'll just show. As you see, you probably have a hard time figuring out what the vase is going to look like. Actually, these parts were thrown this way. So that's one of the challenges with making a vase from parts, is that the whole proportion and figuring out what it's all going to look like in the end when it's put together, it's very, very tricky. So that's one challenge that you don't really have to deal with when you make a vase from a single piece of clay. One of the things that's essential with throwing with sections, and this is also true with making jars with lids, is that the parts need to fit each other. So when I threw this, I always start with the body, and then I measure the base. Okay, and I want to make sure that this measurement corresponds to this area here, because this bowl is going to be flipped over, this is going to be attached. Okay, this being a closed form, I've got, I don't have to worry about how big this opening is for this to sit on. If this wasn't closed, then that would be more of an issue. Where parts come together, you want to make sure that that you do your measurements properly so that one part's not falling into the other. And say, for instance, if I did want to make another part that would have been attached to this, I want to make sure I measure out here and that the base of the other piece is that same measurement so they can stack on top of each other. I've had students where they did the measurements incorrectly, and they measure the inside of this, and so then the other piece falls inside of here. Make sure that where you're going to attach, that there's plenty of surface area for the joints. So I would have made sure that this lip was thicker and flat so that that other piece has a nice surface to stack onto. Okay, so those are some considerations. So probably understand now that planning is going to be essential when you're making a vase from sections. Okay. So I'm going to talk about a couple of things while I set up. When I'm making a pot that's going to be made from parts, whether it's a vase or a jar, and I need the various parts to fit well, I want to make sure that the clay that I'm using for all the parts came from the same chunk. You want to avoid a situation where you're having to use clay from 2 different bags, because the water content might be a little bit different between the bags of clay, and that's going to affect shrinkage, which in turn will affect the fit of the different components. Okay. I always start off with throwing the body And the reason being is that it proportion. If I just have the body, then I can refer to the body as I determine the size that I want the other parts to be. I'm going to have to throw this quickly. I need to keep the video short. Even if I'm not planning on keeping the floor to a pot, I still like to throw with the floor intact. I can always remove the floor later. Massive air bubbles. And it's just going to make throwing a bit more of a challenge. Well, students like to see me mess up, so you might be in for a treat. Let's see. Okay. So I'm shaping the body. Collaring. My throwing tends to be very tight, very precise, and I guess throwing with air pockets and being in a rush is a good thing if I'm trying to make very loose looking pots. Make sure I get the air, the water and slip out of this before it's too late. Okay. So this is a closed form that I'm throwing. Let's get this as narrow an opening as possible. Okay, and there's a very, very small hole. It's not completely closed. And what this allows me to do is I can exaggerate the shoulder if I want it to be more shallow. And if it feels like it's about to collapse on me, I can just pinch that top off, close the air off, and then it allows me to work on shaping. So I can have a really shallow shoulder like this. And it's not going to collapse. It's a little balloon. All right. So that is the closed form. You don't have to throw a closed form to make a vase in sections. Just thought I'd show you how to throw a more advanced form for those that want that extra challenge. All right, and then what I'll do is I'll just put a little hole. You can do it there or on the side, you know, a place that's going to be waste material anyway. And the reason why that's important to do is as the clay dries, it shrinks. If you have air that can't be vented out, the air pressure is going to build up as the clay shrinks, and it's going to cause the wall to crack, split open somewhere. Okay, so that's the closed form. Oops, forgot to do one thing. And I want to use the calipers to measure the base. So the distance from here to here is the same as this. And so I'll measure across. And there's some extra thickness down there that I'll be able to trim away, but still I'll take this measurement. And I want the base that I create to be that measurement. Right. So that's loose, but I'm just going to deal with it anyway. I recommend beginning students that you get a good fit with the bat on the wheel. Otherwise, wow, look at those air pockets. How that happened? Maybe it was a piece of clay I hadn't wedged. Okay. Let's throw a bowl. Calipers to make some measurements. The form can get quite complicated quickly when you're making a pot in sections, so I try to keep the components rather understated. Is that they're quite interesting pieces unto themselves, then when you combine them, you might get a vase that's way too busy. So that's an aesthetic decision. All right, so that is the base. I would have used the calipers a little bit more to keep checking the diameter of the very, very bottom of the bowl, but I am limited by time on my computer for this video. I still have a third section to throw. And because it's a closed form, I don't have to really make any measurements of the top. What I want to do is consider what I want the top to look like. Okay, Okay, so make some sort of shape, whether it's a cylinder or cup. Really up to you. Okay, but there should make sense on the pot. Like if the surface is rather smooth on the body, should it be smooth on the neck as well? Okay, so think about those kinds of things. There'll be another video where I'll assemble the various components. But this is more or less done. Getting rid of the water, inside, outside, and then using the wire to cut the pot free.